Canada is at the next level of gun control. So Canadians, you better look out for what's coming next, because we know this is in the backdrop of freezing bank accounts for the Freedom Convoy, and I don't know what the scope was for that. If it was anyone who donated to them, or I mean, stuff that you wouldn't really even think was possible maybe 20 years ago. And now we're at this level where I think it's a long game when you do this. It's going to take a while to kind of disarm the population. It's a long-term thing, but this isn't a thing that's trending in a good direction. I mean, you are trending in that direction, not tomorrow, but down the line. It's like, okay, bank account, we got that on lock. You have no self-defense. We can do martial law. Next time something happens like the Freedom Convoy, you get in the boxcar. That's where Canada's heading. And I'll bring up Fox News to show you. I like Fox News because they have the little reading thing, and I like to have the article read to me. It's kind of convenient. But Canadian PM Trudeau, I mean, this is what he announced right here.
Canadian PM Trudeau announces legislation to freeze handgun ownership, buy back assault-style weapons. The Minister of Public Safety called it Canada's most significant action on gun violence in a generation.
Now, nothing new happened as far as guns go in Canada that I'm aware of. I mean, they had that terrible incident in 2020. I think it was about 20 people died or got hurt. I forget the details, but that was one of their biggest mass shooting events. And does Justin Trudeau's security detail carry? You damn well better believe they do. So think about that in the backdrop as we hear this. And it reminds me of Bill de Blasio in New York when he came out with his pandemic response. And I was like, he reminds me of that brown-nosing kid in class. You know, that kid in class where you know what the teacher wanted or something like that, and then the brown-noser would be like, ooh, I'm going to do this. Ooh, I'm going to do this. And it just rubbed people the wrong way. And what Justin Trudeau is doing, it's probably pissing off Joe Biden a little bit. Because now he's like, ooh, look, we don't have the same type of constitution that they do in America. Ooh, Mr. and Mrs. Globalists, we can do this now. I'm the leader. And that's what Gavin Newsom, Cuomo, all these mayors, why do you think they did? It's not some sitting in a room like, oh, we're all going to do this. We know what boss wants. It's a matter of who's going to tell boss, nah, boss, or who's going to tell boss, ooh, I'm going to do this. That's what Justin Trudeau comes across as to me. He comes across as that brown-nosing dude who's really just going to do whatever boss wants. And boss wants the people to not be able to defend themselves, to arm themselves. Ooh, boss, I got you.
We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. In other words, we're capping the market for handguns. As a further part of this new legislation, we're also fighting gun smuggling and trafficking by increasing maximum criminal penalties and providing more tools for law enforcement to investigate firearm crimes. And we'll require the permanent alteration of long gun magazines so they can never hold more than 5 rounds. These are actions that doctors, experts, and chiefs of police have been calling for years. And we're acting on their advice.
There's that expert word again.
I also want to thank the advocates, many of whom are here today, for your tireless efforts. I know that for too many of you, grief and loss are at the root of the work that you do. I want to recognize that, and on behalf of all Canadians, I want to thank you for your strength. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting to hear clapping during that. Even if you felt like you needed to do that, it's very telling that you would clap during it, like it's a celebration. Even if you thought you needed to do something like this, and I'm going to talk about a mandatory buyback program. Let me say that a mandatory buyback. You're going to hear that in a little bit. It's a weird way to say, give me your damn guns. It's a nice way to say, your guns are now my guns. I'll give you some money for it. But that's where we are. I just had a discussion about with somebody on this just recently, and I'll go to that real quick on Twitter. It was just a back and forth on the Second Amendment, and so I went through it. I talked about this in another video, but I was like, man, the first thing we go to is attacking 2A. This person said, who's attacking 2A? I'm like, any legislation is an attack on 2A, and you're talking about more legislation. Why? 2A doesn't prevent legislation on guns. What do you mean it doesn't? That's the whole point of it. What is the point of it if it doesn't prevent legislation on guns? No, seriously, what's the point? Why would you even need it? Of course it does. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. 2A is there to protect citizens from a power-hungry, corrupt, greedy government. Not just your own. It's any government. It really was primarily a foreign invader. If the same people can override it, that defeats the purpose. It doesn't even recognize the right to own guns. What do you think it recognizes the right of? To keep and bear arms. It doesn't recognize the right. This is a real conversation on Twitter. And it might be a bot. I fully acknowledge that. It might be a bot, 77 followers, followed by Sal. Wow. That's weird. Maybe it's not a bot. But whatever, I don't know. And keep and bear arms, it doesn't recognize any right to own, buy, sell, manufacture, etc. So this person, Abe, is saying, so I said, wait, it doesn't recognize the right to own a gun? What do you think it does? It's a short amendment. What do you think it recognizes? It keep and bear arms. So you can have, it's almost like the Seinfeld episode. Do y'all remember the Seinfeld episode? I'm dating myself. This is years now, man. Seinfeld's so old now. But when he went to the restaurant, it's one of the early episodes, and he made a reservation. So Seinfeld goes to the restaurant, and he made a reservation. So he goes up there with Elaine and George, and he's like, okay, I have a reservation for 7. And they're like, hold on, you got to wait. And then they're waiting for a while. And after a while, he's like, I thought I had it was like a long time they're waiting. So after a while, he's like, I had a reservation. What happened? They said they got to get the table ready. And then Seinfeld's like, the whole point of the reservation is to hold the table. What's the point of the reservation if you don't hold it? So I'm going to Abe, what's the point of keeping and bearing arms if it doesn't give you the right to own them? What does that mean? It's like James Madison is rolling over in his grave like, are people this stupid in 2022? Like, what did I have to write for you to understand what I meant here? It doesn't recognize the right to own, buy, sell, manufacture. The reason I bring that up is that's exactly what Justin Trudeau said. Obviously, it's Canada, a different country, but you can see what our government would want to do in this global thing where rich people have security, guns, everything they want, and you are a pleb. And I went to the zoo today with my kids. It kind of feels like they're in that conference in Davos or whatever they were, just had. It kind of feels like they want the world to be the zoo and you're in the zoo and they want you to be happy in a cage, basically, and like not a tight cage, but a virtual cage. So I said, this is such a great conversation. You're saying it guarantees the right to have a gun and carry a gun, but it doesn't guarantee the right to own, buy, sell, and manufacture a gun. So you're telling me I got a reservation, but you didn't hold the table? What's the point of the reservation if you don't hold the reservation? And Abe says, to claim that 2A prohibits legislation on guns is flat out wrong. Okay. It recognizes the right to possess and carry a firearm and limits government regulation of those specific activities. Well, we know we already have legislation that goes against both of those two things. So that, Abe, you're not making sense already. And then Abe says it does not limit the government's regulation of any other firearm activity. It's as clear as day. No, Abe, it's not. What you're saying is not clear to me. So by your interpretation, the government could ban the sale of all guns and that would be constitutional? He said 2A doesn't restrict the government from banning gun sales. That's what's happening in Canada. Constitutionally. So basically, what's the point of the Second Amendment if everything Justin Trudeau could do, we could do here? Obviously, that's not right. But constitutionally, can the government ban the sale of all guns? 2A doesn't restrict the government from banning gun sales. Can people constitutionally make their own guns? The Constitution does not regulate the actions of individuals. Congress could pass legislation to ban that activity, but it would not violate the 2A. So yes, I said, can people make their own guns? He's saying no. Congress could pass legislation to ban the activity. And then I said, what do you think was in the head of James Madison when he wrote it? If the government could pass legislation to outlaw the ownership, production, purchase, and sales of arms. So you really think James Madison was the dumbest person on earth? I don't need to guess. I have his word. So I was just thinking about that. It means nothing. It's a stupid conversation, but that's what happened in Canada. Little did I know it would happen in Canada.